Joe Biden's efforts to bring down tensions in the escalating war between Israel and Hamas faced massive setbacks even before he landed in Israel. Jordan called off the US president's planned summit with Arab leaders after a deadly explosion at a Gaza hospital killed hundreds. The postponement of the Amman summit comes after Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas withdrew from the scheduled meetings in protest of the attacks. The Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza blamed an Israeli airstrike for the destruction and the tragedy. The Israeli military said it had no involvement and pinned the blame on a misfired rocket from Hamas. Jordan's foreign minister said, and I quote here, "This war and this aggression are pushing the region to the brink." He stated Jordan would only host the summit when all participants agreed on its purpose, which would be to stop the war and respect the humanity of Palestinians. While in the air, Joe Biden released a statement saying he was outraged and deeply saddened by the explosion at the hospital and the terrible loss of life that resulted. He said he spoke immediately after hearing the news with King Abdullah II of Jordan and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Netanyahu is blaming barbaric terrorists for this attack, but Biden has directed his national security team to continue gathering information about what exactly happened. So US is conducting an individual and a separate investigation into the attack. They're not just buying into the narrative coming in from the Israeli side. The cancellation of the Jordan leg of the trip reflects an increasingly volatile situation that will test the limits of American influence in the region, which has been dwindling in recent times. Here's why the Jordan summit was crucial for the US president. The Israel-Palestinian conflict, the Israel-Hamas conflict, has been ongoing for decades, and to a large extent it's involved the same cadre of leaders. Netanyahu is the longest serving prime minister in Israeli history. Mahmoud Abbas has been the Palestinian leader for nearly 20 years. Abdullah II has been king since 1999. Biden has called the Jordanian king a loyal ally in a tough neighborhood. Now, Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is the newest leader and president of Egypt since 2014. Furious protesters tried to storm the Israeli embassy in Amman, where Biden was due to meet Arab leaders. Lebanon's Iran-backed Hezbollah called for a day of rage over the strike to coincide with Biden's arrival. A day of rage. It fueled fears of the very escalation by Tehran and its allies that the US president's visit is supposed to warn against. Tear gas fired near US embassy in Lebanon at protesters. Hundreds of angry protesters gathered outside the French embassy in Tunisia as well. This happened on Tuesday, also denouncing the United States. There is complete outrage. And of course, flags are being flared as well. In Iraq, scores of protesters gathered near Baghdad's green zone following the Gaza hospital blast. Take a look at this. And then in the Iranian capital of Tehran, hundreds protested against Israel outside French and UK embassies. Apart from funding Hamas, Israel's arch foe backs Hezbollah in Lebanon as well, and a number of proxy militias across West Asian region. Now, the French President Emmanuel Macron said nothing can justify targeting civilians and called for humanitarian access without delay. Qatar's foreign ministry called the hospital strike a dangerous escalation in the course of the confrontations. Turkish President Erdogan condemned the incident as the latest example of Israeli attacks devoid of the most basic human values. The UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk called the hospital strike totally unacceptable, insisting that the perpetrators must be held to account. UN Chief Antonio Guterres called for immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Israel-Hamas conflict. Russia and the United Arab Emirates, UAE, called for an emergency UN Security Council meeting for the same. European Union's Charles Michel said that targeting civilian infrastructure in Gaza breaks international law. Then the African Union chief, Moussa Faki Mahamat, accused Israel of a war crime following the deadly strike. The World Health Organization condemned the deadly strike and demanded the immediate protection of civilians and healthcare in the Gaza Strip, which still remains blockaded. All right, we were earlier joined by Glenn Carl from Boston. Glenn is a former national intelligence officer from the CIA and national security and foreign policy expert. Listen to what he had to say on the matter.
Well, it would be a catastrophe. It is a catastrophe for Israel and for the IDF to do anything like this. So there's no reason that they would do that intentionally. I also think that their record of admitting grudgingly, but admitting and stating accurate information is quite consistent. So I think it's inconceivable that Israel did it intentionally. It is conceivable that it was an error, but since there are videos and the strong statement that by Israel that they didn't do it, I think that that is in fact probably the case. I think it's possible that, as Israel said, it was an errant missile or missiles from either the Islamic Jihad or Hamas, but we don't know that. Whatever the origin of the missiles, it's a catastrophe for the victims, for Israel, and obviously has inflamed all of the Muslim world. Well, I think the prospect of an Israeli invasion of Gaza has, from the very beginning, been an extremely dangerous prospect for Israel because Hamas is not, all 2.5 million Palestinians in the Gaza Strip are not members of Hamas. And obviously we've seen that 1 million of them are now refugees, have been forced from their homes, are enduring tremendous hardship. And none of this helps Israel at all, really. They have Israel an almost impossible task if their objective is to root out and destroy Hamas in Gaza. The military can't address ideally what is in part a political and social issue.